Sam, thank you very much. Great to have you on. He's about to be busy, man. Have meetings, etc., travel, and my God, maybe even taking a few days off occasionally between now and media days. Sam, we were discussing, just like the Southern Conference Commissioner is speaking out. And if everybody other than the Big Ten and the SEC all kind of combined arms, locked their arms together, do they have any way of trying to change the momentum that they're all going to be just kind of in a way pushed aside?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they have a 0% chance. I do think if there was some type of unity outside of those two big behemoth conferences, that you'd actually have a chance to make something happen, because I think we saw it a little bit even in this discussion that we've had about the multiple auto bids. If you guys remember, they were talking about multiple auto bids last year. And after it got floated and there was a lot of bad reaction to it, and then they kind of backed off of it for a little while. Now, of course, we're back in that discussion again. And I think Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, as much as they want to do what's best for their own conference, and they're going to do that at the end of the day, I do think they're not necessarily insensitive to a collective backlash. And that's the key, though, is what you said, Dave, is if it's only a few scattered voices from a few conferences, it's one thing. But if it's the rest of the FBS, or if it's the rest of college football shouting this from the rooftops, then you have a chance, I think, of maybe pushing back against some of this stuff. But on the flip side, their power is kind of codified in this contract. They have more say, they have more revenue in this upcoming college football playoff contract. So in some ways, everybody can kind of bellyache all they want, and the SEC and Big Ten can do what they want if they want to. But I do think if the collective backlash is enough, they might realize that it's shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, and Sam, it would be, because you're alienating a lot of the country. They have a ton of fans, but they're still just 34 schools, right? But I think therein lies the problem, right? Is that the ACC and Big 12 aren't necessarily in lockstep with each other on this. And it would really have to start with those two and then trickle down to the G6 and then below that for any kind of unity to happen. But I wouldn't say that Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark are in lockstep right now.
Yeah, and that's one thing I would say that I have found surprising in all of this is how reluctant those two commissioners have been to speak out when things like this happen. And I'm going to attribute it to the fact that they're doing it because their leagues stand to get multiple auto bids also, and they don't want to ruin that chance. Like the ACC and the Big 12 will both get two in this format that's being proposed, and I think they both realize getting two guaranteed is good, because there's some years you may not get two. For instance, the Big 12, I only had the one last year. They probably should have had two, and you guys have discussed this, and I think BYU was vastly underappreciated and underrated at the end of the season in the playoff discussion. They were really not even a factor in the playoff discussion. I thought they should have been. But I think because of they're thinking, hey, we got the bird in the hand with two, let's not rock the boat too much. I would take and it's easy for me to say I'm not running the conference. I don't have anybody's power in my hands. But I think if those two stood up together in lockstep and said, hey, we're not down for this, maybe it would have an impact. I'm really surprised, and especially Yormark, who has been willing to take risks in other areas, who's been willing to be bold in some of his decision-making. I'm really surprised they haven't been more vocal, or he hasn't been more vocal in bucking back against some of this publicly. I don't think the commissioners have a lot to lose by bucking back at him, because if they lose the auto bid, if this fell apart because the Big 12 and the ACC said they didn't like it, and then they took away an auto bid and made them only single bid leagues, I think the backlash to that publicly would be enormous.
So, Sam, I think we talked about this last week with you a little bit. The commission was announced. There's really no new details. It's just that now we've heard Nick Saban talk about it, and there was the funny line. This is Twitter in a nutshell. Like, you see a line from an interview, but there's more context to it, right? So he's like, he basically said, I don't think we need a commission. And everybody's like, oh, he doesn't even think that there needs to be a commission. I think what he was saying is that they already know the problems, right? Like, that's, I think, what the context was I don't think we needed a commission to identify the problems. We already know what the problems are. Now it's about working on them. How have your thoughts, I kind of guess, been or developed or changed maybe in the last few days, just as we've gotten more, I guess, not clarity on the details, but we've kind of seen this thing sort of been talked about a little bit more?
Yeah, the thing with the clip on Feinbaum, there's a couple things I have to say about that. One, the fact that he said, I don't know a lot about the commission, or I don't think we need a commission, to me, I took that as head coach deflect the question when I don't want to answer it. The same way a head coach stands up at a press conference and says, and is asked about an injury and they don't want to disclose the information. Well, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Of course they know what you're talking about. They know exactly everything that's going on with the team. Of course Nick Saban knows what's going on here, but he doesn't want to answer because it hasn't been announced yet. And he may not be authorized to publicly say what they're going to do yet because it hasn't been officially codified that they're doing this. So that was kind of how I took that. But the funny thing to me was that he said, I don't really think we need a commission. Then he went on to say, I think there's a lot of people out there that know how to fix it. I think we may just have to push forward and get everybody together, and some of it may need to be done on the federal level. What is that if not a commission? Like, that sounds like a commission to me. So a group of people on the federal level trying to get something done. So that sounds that's the funny thing is, as he went on to talk, everything he said sounded like things that they're going to do in this commission. So for what I think about what's going to happen with it is, or what kind of impact it may have, is I just want to see who the other people are going to be on it. I like the choices of Nick Saban and Cody Campbell as co-chairs, but I want to see who else is on it. Are we getting people who have a really deep knowledge of college sports? Are we getting a wide cross-section across sports? Because I would admit, if this is a commission on college sports, in theory, it's not just football. So I would like to see, are you having some Olympic sport athletes? Are you having some women on it? And also, how far removed are they from college sports? If they were an athlete or a former coach, how far removed are they? How involved are they? How much knowledge do they have from an institutional level? I would love to know that, because that to me will give me a sense for how serious this thing can be.
What do you think what Saban meant when he said he's not real sure that they need a commission? Was he already kind of just, maybe since he was named to it, he didn't really, like, maybe he doesn't know if it's a good. That's what he said yesterday on the.
Yeah, I think he's just deflecting.
At Game Time, we revel in life's impromptu moments, like cheering on your hometown team at a Friday night baseball game or dancing the night away at an intimate concert. So we built a ticket marketplace that makes it faster and easier to get into your favorite events at a moment's notice. Discover incredible live experiences, real-time price drops, see your seat view, instant checkout, mobile tickets, and best of all, Game Time ticket coverage. Score the best deals on great seats with Game Time.
I think it's just deflection because it's not publicly announced yet. That's the way I read it.
Okay.
As far as we know, everything is still moving forward. And me and Justin Williams and Chris Vanini, we had an update on this morning. As far as we know, everything is still moving forward, and they're still working to get this thing formed. So there's been, despite what he said yesterday, there's been no change to our knowledge that this thing is happening. This thing is still moving forward as at this moment, as far as we know. Of course, as you know, things can change really quickly. But as of this morning, when we followed up, everything seems to point to this. The thing is still forming.
I took it a little bit differently. I took it as he's going to be on it because he was asked to be on it. But I think like you said before, they know the problems. And actually, I kind of read it as, I think we know the fixes too. Like they know, they know what the fix is. They know, like, they can sit around and do all that, and they can. And if the committee is admitting what the fix is and then trying to build the mechanisms to do that, then great. But that's never been what these committees are about.
No, and here's the thing: they know what the fix is, but is the fix legal?
Right?
Is the fix allowable? Like, can you pull it off? Like, because in Paul, I think you've hammered on this a lot over the last few weeks. The easy answer is collective bargaining and employment. Like, that's the easy answer, because you can get every restriction that you want, and you can get every concession that you want from the athletes if you can bargain with them and they can agree to it. But that's where this whole thing, the rubber meets the road on this whole thing, is they're trying to thread the needle of treating them like employees without giving them employee status. And that is a very tough needle to thread. And so as long as they're trying to do that, it's going to require these gymnastics that we're doing constantly to kind of find the middle ground between not making them employees, but giving them compensation and giving them some type of protections and trying to regulate movement and trying to regulate payment and all that stuff. I mean, the reason a salary cap works in the NFL or the NBA or there's not one in Major League Baseball, but the reason it works in those two sports and the reason why a free agency calendar works the way it does is because it's collectively bargained.
So, Sam, you mentioned the article. It's a great article you, Chris Vanini, Justin Williams have, and we're discussing some of the parts of it. But for those who haven't checked it out, go over to theathletic.com. And you go over not only kind of what Nick Saban has said in the past, but also Cody Campbell, who's a very interesting piece to this. Anything stand out to you from maybe either side about their proposals? And I know like some of it, I just immediately go, that's not happening. Like the reorganizing of conferences, to where we're going to reform the Southwest Conference. Like Texas and A&M are not going to go for that after working so hard to get in the SEC, right? Like unless they were somehow forced to. But does anything stand out about those two and their ideas for football, maybe more so than others?
Yeah, the interesting thing to me is that there's two things that stand out to me. When you look back at the past stances for these two, particularly with Cody Campbell, is Cody has been an advocate for everybody, and that means not ceding power to the Big Ten and the SEC and making sure that whatever this commission does or whatever college sports changes are enacted, that they're inclusive of all of FBS or all of Division I. And I think that's an important perspective to have because Nick Saban, on the other hand, has been on this, hey, we should only have the Power Four schools play each other. And so I think they differ on that stance. And that's going to be fascinating where their co-chairs. I'll be curious to see how that discussion goes when they eventually meet. The other thing that's interesting, and to your point, Craig, about things not being possible, I don't think this is possible at all. But the idea that Cody had about pooling the rights together, the media rights, which is something that actually we did 30 years ago when the College Football Association existed. After the 1984 Supreme Court decision and schools and conferences were given the power to negotiate their own deals, the College Football Association grabbed, I think it was the Southwest Conference, the SEC, the ACC, the WAC, several conferences, and they collectively negotiated those rights. Cody Campbell's idea is for college sports to get included in the Sports Broadcasting Act in 1961, which is what allowed the NFL to collectively negotiate its rights without an antitrust violation. So his idea is, hey, let's get college football involved in that and pool the entire FBS rights together and sell that. And the reason he argues that is his stance is that they can make a lot more money than they do now, where they're competing against each other, where the Big Ten is competing against the SEC for media rights dollars, or those two conferences are competing against the Big 12 and the ACC for media rights dollars, or the Group of Five conferences are competing against each other. His stance is, hey, can we get them all together and just pull the whole thing together and sell it off the way the NFL does, would they sell off their things to Fox or CBS or Amazon or whatever? And I do think there's a legitimacy to that it could make a lot more money than what you do now, but I don't think there's ever any shot of that happening. I would be untangling all those contracts as they stand now, which I imagine they're pretty ironclad. It would be hard to untangle them. But I also wonder, would the Big Ten and the SEC be even willing to do that? Would they be willing to play on the same field with everyone?
Hey, I agree with them on that point, Sam. I think that's a good idea. I agree. But
is that going to include the Group of Five?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay, then Alabama or Ohio State, which is they're getting a large chunk. Would they get more than they're getting now? And
that's what we don't know yet.
Yeah,
we don't know. Like we just know that his idea is do it collectively. How that revenue gets divvied up, I don't know what that would look like. I think certainly you would have those programs would argue that they should get more, and we're already seeing that play out at the conference level in the ACC with what the ACC did with its uneven revenue distribution. So that would be a really hard thing to do. But I do think if you were able to find a way to do it, it would tamper down realignment, and you would be able to help some of these programs that are a little bit less fortunate in terms of financials in the athletic department, that you'd help them survive.
Sam Conn with us, theathletic.com on 365 Sports, joins us most Thursdays, the next few weeks on and off because of duties he has personally, but also with meetings with theathletic.com. Well, so what's next? What's the next story? Is it the House settlement decision? What is next in your opinion?
Yeah, I think once we get the House settlement, because we also have, I think a lot of things are being held up because of that. The Football Oversight Committee, some of the decisions they want to make There's always, of course, we know there's been a lot of discussion of whether or not there should be 2 portal windows or 1. None of that movement's going to happen until we actually get a settlement. The thing that I'm really curious about that I'm going to be tracking or try to track this summer is, once the settlement is approved, what is the fate of NIL collectives? Are collectives still going to exist? And what is the state of this NIL clearinghouse? The Deloitte obviously is going to be in charge of flagging the deals and deciding what's market value and what's not. But I have a really big question: is what happens when deals start getting turned down for not being fair market value? From my understanding of the settlement, is that because of the settlement and because this clearinghouse is going to be part of the settlement, that people will not be able to sue for it. But I'll be curious to see how schools are going to react, because, as long as there's people have tried to limit compensation in college football, people have always tried to get around it. So if you put a cap at $22 million, someone's going to try to exceed it. And how are they going to go about that? So I'm curious to see, do collectives get shut down? Are schools just going to pay straight out of revenue share? Or are they going to try to find ways outside of the true NIL, or a way to do true NIL through a collective somehow? And what does that look like? What does enforcement look like? I'd be really curious to know, if they flag a deal and they say it's not true market value, is there a penalty for it? Or what do you, if you turn it down, or if a team exceeds the cap, what happens? What kind of penalties are there that are going to be levied on that program? Those are all things that I think are still very unclear at this point, and I'm curious to see how that all unfolds as we get through the settlement.
Anything else, guys? Sam, cut. I brought this up, Sam, and this is not right now, it's not imminent, but you hear about the possibility of separation. The elite get even more elite, and there's this so-called whatever might be a separation into a super league. I'm of the opinion, no matter what South Carolina, and by the way, they're getting a lot better, but no matter what Northwestern or Vanderbilt are, that the other schools who are bigger, better, faster, and stronger, who have been with them for a long, long time, are not going to leave them behind. They're not going to leave the uncles and cousins, aunts, and whoever else behind. Do you agree with that?
I would not say I'm confident in that,
okay,
because here's why. Look at the Pac-12. Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA left all those other schools in the Pac-12 behind. And so look at FSU and Clemson were ready to leave their ACC mates behind. We saw it in the Southwest Conference eons ago, where Texas and Texas A&M, and Baylor and Texas Tech left their conference mates behind. It's a tale as old as time in this sport. So am I under the impression that Alabama and Auburn and Georgia and Texas now, since they're in the SEC, would they not go leave Vanderbilt and Kentucky behind? I don't believe for a second that they would have a problem leaving them behind if they had to, if push came to shove. And now the difference is you have a commissioner. Would the commissioner allow it? Would Greg Sankey allow that to happen? Probably not. Would Tony Petitti allow it to happen? Probably not. So then at that point, it becomes a power struggle between the presidents of the schools at the halves and the commissioner and the leadership of those leagues. And then could you be getting into lawsuits? Our favorite thing to do in college sports now is sue. So yeah, I think I would call it unlikely, but I wouldn't rule it out by any stretch, because there's too many times I've seen it happen in the last 40 years to know better that they would leave them behind in a heartbeat.
Yeah, just recently. I mean, you're right. Oregon State, Washington State are alone because everybody bolted. Yeah,
you're only as loyal as your options.
Yeah,
that's right. 100%. 100%. That's a really good analogy.
I just think that those folks in the South, though, they're just a little bit more together as a family. They're not going to. They're just a little bit more.
No, they hide it
loyal.
Better.
They do.
No, I think Dave's right, because look. What's one of the reasons the Southwest Conference fell apart is not because everybody was cheating, but because everybody was telling on each other.
Yeah.
How many SEC programs were telling on each other? I don't think the infighting in that league was as out in the open as it was in the Southwest Conference. I could be wrong. My memory could be serving me 30, 40 years ago, but SMU and TCU and Texas A&M, and they were all Houston. They were all bickering in each other, and eventually ended up causing the death penalty, of course, and all those programs having sanctions, and then the league ends up dissolving. I feel like the SEC kind of kept it a little bit, like there were programs getting in trouble, but they weren't, I don't know if they were tattling on each other as much as the Southwest Conference. So I think Dave's right in that there's a cultural bond between those programs, and they're the only conference that I know that cheers the conference name.
Absolutely.
When they're at a sporting event. I've never heard anybody cheer ACC. I've never heard anybody cheer Big Ten at a game. So I think there's something to that.
Auburn would turn Alabama in a heartbeat, vice versa, but they wouldn't want them to go as far as like ending the program. No, we need them because we hate them. We need them. By the way, in the chat room, this is from Kim. This is why Sam Kahn is one of my 3 favorite guests. He brings great information, insight to every single interview.
I think the SEC is more mob-like, though. Like, they're loyal, but they've got kind of the mafia rules. So, like, there might be an SEC body on the ground, but you're not going to know who did it. Like, you're just going to be like, well, sorry about it. Yeah.
That's fair. Sankey might have a little bit of a mob boss mentality or demeanor to him. I think.
Well, he sure acts like it. Yeah.
Hey, what happened to Mississippi State? I don't know.
He's a little bit cutthroat. I will say, he's not the kind of guy you want to cross. Speaking of the chat, Smoke, I made sure I didn't want to cross you today because I see you're getting feisty in the chat today. Okay.
No, I am. Okay, you guys help answer this question. If you take the evaluation of the Big Ten and the SEC, not just the college football playoff money or the distribution or the network, but if you take the evaluation of those 2 conferences, it is more than half of the 100% pie combined. Then you add the ACC, the Big 12, and all of the group of 5s together. There are more teams, but the evaluation, the network money, the college football playoff, everything is above 50%, if not nearly 60% compared to the other ones combined. Someone was trying to argue that is not the case, that they're more valuable combined than the Big Ten and the SEC. That's not true.
And Dave was checking them. He was checking them. So I know now. You better come with facts if you come at sports.
Well, I went in there and looked. I looked it up, and it's like 58% minimum of how much of the 100% pie. Sam, thank you, buddy. Great to have you on the show. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Sam Kahn.